They laughed when I declined the job offer, and honestly, I can still hear the sound of it in my head. It wasn't the loud kind of laughter, the type that echoes through a room. No, it was the quieter, sharper kind, the kind people use when they think they're being subtle but really aren't. The kind that says, "Who do you think you are?" And maybe that was what bothered me the most. Not the offer I rejected, not the risk I took, but the way they looked at me as if I had done something foolish, something impossible to justify. But deep down, I knew I had made the decision for a reason, even if I wasn't completely sure what that reason was yet. I remember staring at the email on my screen that morning. The job offer was good. Like really good. The kind of job that came with a fancy title, a salary that made my heart skip a beat, and a team of people who seemed to already assume I would say yes. It should have been the easiest acceptance of my life. Anyone else in my place might have taken it instantly. Even people around me kept saying things like, "Don't overthink it," and "Opportunities like this don't come twice," and "Are you crazy? Just accept it already." And maybe I was crazy, but something about it didn't feel right, and I couldn't force myself to ignore that feeling. So I declined. My voice shook when I said it, but I still said it. I took a breath, explained my reasons as calmly as I could, and waited for their reaction. And that's when the strange smiles appeared. A few eyebrows went up. Someone whispered something under their breath. Someone else looked at me like I had just turned down a winning lottery ticket. And then came that laughter, not loud, but sharp enough to cut straight through me. I tried to keep my face steady, pretending their doubt meant nothing. But inside my chest, my heartbeat felt like it had its own opinion about what I'd just done. Walking out of the building that day felt heavier than I expected. I didn't have another offer waiting. I didn't have a backup plan. All I had was a decision I hoped wouldn't ruin everything I had worked for. Still, something about the air outside felt cleaner, calmer. I remember thinking, maybe things will make sense later. Maybe this is one of those choices people talk about years from now. The kind where they say, "It was the turning point. It changed everything," or "It led me somewhere better." But at that moment, the only thing I knew for sure was that I needed clarity, and clarity wasn't something that came instantly. The rest of the day passed slowly. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach tightened. I kept expecting an email saying the offer had been withdrawn permanently, or a message from someone asking me if I'd lost my mind. But there was nothing. Not even a single notification about the job. It was almost too quiet. I tried distracting myself, but the same thoughts circled inside my head, looping like a song I didn't want to hear. What if declining the offer was the biggest mistake of my life? What if I had just shut the only door that would ever open for me? What if everyone who laughed was right? It didn't help that my friends had mixed reactions. Some said they supported me. Others tried to hide their confusion. One friend even said, "You better hope you know what you're doing," and even though she meant it kindly, it stung more than I expected. I wasn't sure what I was doing. I just knew I wasn't ready to say yes to something that felt wrong. Night finally came, and I still couldn't stop thinking about it. I replayed the conversation, the expressions on their faces, the tone of their voices. It all sat heavy in my chest. I kept asking myself why the decision felt right even when everything around me made it seem wrong. I had turned down a job people would fight to get, and the weight of that reality didn't fully hit me until I was alone. The silence in my room felt louder than any laughter. But everything changed the next morning. The sun had barely risen when my phone rang. At first, I ignored it because I didn't recognize the number. I figured it was probably a routine call or some random notification. But something in me paused. Something told me to pick it up. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was just that strange feeling again, the one I had before declining the offer. So I grabbed my phone, stared at the screen for a second, and finally answered. The voice on the other end was calm, deep, confident. Not the kind of voice you forget easily, and definitely not the kind of voice you expect to hear first thing in the morning. He said my name slowly, like he already knew I would be surprised. And I was. Completely. Then he said something I never expected to hear in my entire life. "This is the CEO." For a moment, I didn't breathe. I actually thought I misheard him. CEOs don't call people personally, especially not someone who just declined their job offer. My mind raced, trying to figure out if it was some kind of mistake or prank. But the more he spoke, the clearer it became. It was him, the actual CEO. And he wasn't calling to question my decision or scold me or ask why I said no. No. He said he wanted to hear my side of the story directly, that he respected my decision. And he had one more thing to say, something that made my entire world stop. Tell me what it would take to bring you in. Name your... And right there, right in the middle of that sentence, the call suddenly cut off. The line went completely silent. And in that moment, standing there with my heart racing, I realized everything was about to change, but I had no idea how or why or what he was about to offer me. The call cut off so suddenly that for a few seconds I just stood there staring at the phone like it might magically ring again. My heartbeat was still loud in my ears, almost matching the silence in the room. I tried redialing, but it went straight to a generic corporate voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I didn't even know what I would say. How was I supposed to respond to a CEO telling me to name my what? My price. My conditions. My role. Nobody had ever said something like that to me before. And now, instead of answers, I was left with a half-finished sentence that could mean 1,000 different things. I sat down on the edge of my bed, still gripping my phone, waiting for something. Another call, a text, an email, anything. But nothing happened. The more minutes that passed, the more confusing the situation became. Who calls someone personally like that? Why me? Why now? And why did the call drop right at the most important moment? It felt almost unreal, like something out of a story I wasn't ready to be the main character of. But it was happening, and whether I understood it or not, it was pulling me into something bigger than I expected. I kept thinking about the first interview, replaying conversations in my head. Maybe there had been signs I missed. Maybe someone had said something that made sense now. But the more I thought about it, the more the whole thing felt like a puzzle with pieces scattered everywhere. I remember the hiring manager telling me the CEO was deeply involved in handpicking talent, but I assumed those were just big company words meant to impress candidates. Nobody actually expected the CEO to know every applicant. Yet he knew my name. He knew I had declined the offer. And he wanted to speak to me personally. That alone made the situation even stranger. I tried distracting myself by making breakfast, but I couldn't focus. My thoughts jumped from the CEO's voice to the laughter I heard when I declined the job. It felt like the two things didn't belong in the same story. One side made me feel foolish, and the other made me feel like I mattered more than I realized. It was like being stuck between two versions of myself, one doubtful, one hopeful, and I didn't know which one was closer to the truth. I checked my email every few minutes, scrolling, refreshing, waiting for something new. Still nothing. So I opened the original offer letter again, reading it slowly, trying to understand what they saw in me. The role's description was detailed, almost too detailed. They wanted someone who could handle pressure, make quick decisions, manage people, streamline processes, and bring fresh problem-solving energy to the company. It sounded flattering, but also strange. Why would a big company put so much emphasis on an applicant like me? That's when another memory hit me. During the second interview, one of the senior managers kept studying me in a way I couldn't quite understand. At the time, I assumed he was just being observant. But now, thinking back on it, there was something more serious in his expression, almost analytical. Like he wasn't just interviewing me for a job, but trying to understand something deeper. I brushed the thought away then, but now it felt important. The uncertainty kept building until my phone finally buzzed. I grabbed it instantly, hoping it was the CEO, but it was just a message from a friend asking if I wanted to grab lunch. I told her I couldn't. Not today. Not when I felt like something huge was hanging in the air above me. She sent a couple of confused emojis, but I didn't explain. I wasn't ready to talk about something I didn't understand yet. Hours passed slowly, and the unanswered call kept replaying in my head. The tone of the CEO's voice was calm but firm, like someone who wasn't guessing. Someone who already knew exactly what he wanted. People like that don't call employees randomly, and they definitely don't call candidates who walk away. It made me wonder if declining had somehow put me on a different kind of radar. Maybe they interpreted it as confidence. Maybe it unsettled them. Maybe it intrigued them. I didn't know. By afternoon, I felt restless and decided to take a walk, hoping it would clear my mind. The air outside felt crisp and grounding. People walked past me without noticing anything unusual, while my entire world felt like it had been flipped upside down. I tried imagining what the CEO wanted from me. Maybe he wanted to offer me a higher salary. Maybe he wanted to negotiate. Or maybe he just wanted to understand why someone would reject such a good offer. All the possible answers made me more uneasy, not less. I ended up sitting at a small bench near a park. Watching people go about their day somehow made the situation feel even more surreal. No one around me knew what was happening, and I didn't know if that made me feel more alone or more awake. I kept checking my phone, but the screen stayed blank. Just when I thought the whole thing might have been some strange glitch or a misdialed call, my email pinged. It wasn't from the CEO, but it was from the company. The subject line was simple, almost too simple. Follow-up required. My chest tightened as I opened it. The message said the CEO wanted to continue the conversation but was currently in meetings. It instructed me to be available for another call later in the day. No time. No details. Just a warning to keep my phone on and stay ready. That only made the suspense worse. I spent the next few hours in a strange mix of excitement and dread. I kept thinking about all the people who laughed when I declined the offer. If they knew the CEO was calling me personally, what would they think? Would they still laugh? Would they question everything they assumed about me? Or would they think I got lucky, like this was some kind of accidental moment that had nothing to do with my choices? But the truth was, even I didn't know why the CEO was so interested. I didn't know why he wanted me specifically, or what he planned to say next. The more I thought about it, the more it felt like this wasn't just about a job anymore. Something about the way he spoke, calm, controlled, almost urgent, hinted that something bigger was happening inside the company. Something I had unknowingly stepped into the moment I declined the offer. By evening, I sat near my window, staring at the city lights as the sky turned darker. My phone was beside me, fully charged, notifications turned up, ready for whatever came next. The seconds felt like minutes, and the minutes felt like hours. I tried not to imagine the worst, but it was impossible not to wonder what was waiting on the other side of that call. Was this a second chance? A test? A warning? An opportunity no one expected? Or was I walking into something I didn't understand at all? My phone suddenly buzzed again. Not a call, just a message. But the moment I saw who it was from, my stomach flipped. It was from the CEO himself. A short, direct message with only one line. We need to finish our conversation. Are you ready to talk? And right as I stared at those words, unsure whether to answer yes or ask him what this was all about, the phone started ringing again, and this time it didn't cut off. When the phone rang again, I froze for half a second, almost afraid to pick it up. My fingers felt stiff as I swiped to answer, and the moment I heard his voice on the other end, calm and firm just like before, the room around me felt suddenly smaller. He didn't waste time with greetings. He didn't ask if it was a good moment. He just said my name again, slowly, like he needed to make sure I was fully present. I'm glad you're available, he said. We have things to discuss. My throat felt dry, but I managed to whisper back a simple, I'm here. It was the only thing my brain could form without tripping over itself. He didn't jump back into the sentence he left unfinished that morning. Instead, he asked me something unexpected. Tell me why you really declined the offer. His tone wasn't angry, not even disappointed. It was something else. Curious, but not casual. Like my answer mattered more than I understood. I hesitated, wondering if I should be completely honest or try to sound strategic, but something about his voice made it impossible to lie. So I told him the truth, that the offer felt good, but something in me felt uneasy, that I couldn't accept a role I didn't fully understand, that the job description seemed too wide, like they were hiding a pressure point or expecting me to handle more than what was written, and that I wasn't ready to put myself in a place where I didn't know the real expectations. There was silence for a moment, a long, deep silence that made me wonder if I had just ruined everything. But then he breathed out softly, not annoyed, but thoughtful. So you sensed it, he said. Those 3 words made a chill run through me. Sensed what? Before I could ask, he spoke again. That role was never meant to be a normal one. And your instinct was correct. That only made everything more confusing. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but the CEO continued before I could get out a single word, almost like he knew the thoughts forming in my head. He told me that the company was preparing for a major transition, something internal, something not public, and something that required someone sharp enough to see what others ignored. He didn't explain the transition, but the seriousness in his voice made me feel like it wasn't a small thing. You weren't just another candidate, he said. You were observed closely. That sentence made my chest tighten. Observed? By whom? For what? It didn't feel like a normal company anymore. This was starting to feel like walking into a room where everyone else knew the rules except me. He then mentioned the senior manager who had interviewed me, the one who kept watching me carefully. According to the CEO, he wasn't just assessing my skills. He was testing my reactions, my judgment, my ability to stay calm under pressure. Apparently I passed, even when I didn't realize I was being tested. And when you declined the offer, the CEO said, you told us more about yourself than any interview could. I didn't know if that was a good thing or a dangerous thing. But then his voice shifted slightly, not softer, but heavier, almost like he was choosing his next words slowly. Before we go any further, he said, I need to know if you're prepared for the truth. Because once I tell you, there is no going back. My breath caught in my throat. The way he spoke made it feel like this wasn't about a job anymore. It felt like I was being invited into something deeper, something hidden beneath the polished surface of a successful company. I didn't know if I was ready for that, but I also knew I couldn't back out now. I'm listening, I said quietly. He paused again, and in that silence, I could actually hear faint voices in the background, people talking quickly, doors opening and closing, a sense of urgency on his end. It didn't feel like he was sitting in a peaceful office. Something was happening there. There are two versions of this company, he said. The one the public sees, and the one that actually runs things. The way he said it made my skin prickle. It wasn't dramatic. It sounded like a plain fact, but a heavy one. I tried to keep my breathing steady, but my questions spilled out all at once. Why me? Why pick me for something like this? What kind of role is this exactly? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he said, because you're not easily influenced. You're not someone who follows a path just because it's expected. And you have a skill most people don't realize is rare. His voice became almost analytical. You can sense when something is off, even when you can't explain why. That's exactly what we need. I didn't know whether to feel honored or terrified. Then he added something that made the tension spike even higher. You were not our first choice for this role, but you were the only one who reacted the way we needed. That meant others had been tested. Others had gone through the same process. Others whose reactions apparently didn't fit whatever invisible criteria they were using. I wondered what happened to them. I wondered what I had stepped into by declining that offer. He said the senior manager who watched me was part of an internal committee responsible for identifying people who could work in sensitive areas of the company. He didn't explain what sensitive meant, but judging by the tone, it wasn't about handling paperwork or fixing spreadsheets. It sounded like something that required more trust and skill. Before I could ask more, the CEO's voice lowered slightly. There are things happening here that require someone who isn't afraid to say no. That's why your refusal changed everything. I felt something twist in my stomach. It wasn't fear exactly. It was something else. A feeling I couldn't name. The kind you get when you realize a door is opening, but you have no idea what's behind it. Then, right as I was about to ask for specifics, something in the background on his end grew loud. A voice calling his name urgently. Papers shuffling. Footsteps. The CEO muttered something under his breath, something frustrated, then spoke quickly into the phone. I'm going to send you a document. Read it carefully, but do not share it with anyone. After that, we'll discuss your terms. My pulse jumped at that word again, terms. The same idea he tried to say earlier before the call dropped. He was speaking like this was a negotiation, not a standard hiring process. But before I could reply, before I could ask even one of the questions crowding my mind, he said something that made me freeze. And don't be alarmed if someone contacts you before I do. Not everyone agrees with my choice. My entire body went still. Someone else. Who? Why? The CEO continued, if you receive any unusual messages, calls, or emails, do not respond. They're not part of my team. And then he said the sentence that pushed the suspense to a place I didn't expect. They believe you shouldn't be involved. They don't want you stepping into this. My heart pounded harder than ever. Before I could speak, the line went silent again. The call had ended. But this time, not because of a bad connection. This time, he hung up on purpose. And a few seconds later, my phone buzzed with a new notification, an unread email with no subject line and an unfamiliar sender. The email sat on my screen like a warning, silent but heavy. No subject line, no sender name, just a strange address filled with random letters and numbers. For a moment, I didn't even want to open it. Everything the CEO said echoed in my mind, especially the part about people who didn't want me involved. I stared at the message, wondering if this was what he meant. My finger hovered over it, trembling a little. I told myself to breathe, to stay calm, but nothing about the situation felt normal anymore. Then another thought struck me. What if not opening it was worse? What if the CEO expected me to see something important? What if this was connected to the document he said he'd send? My heartbeat felt loud and unsteady as I finally clicked. The email contained just one line. Don't trust him. No greeting. No signature. No explanation. And below that line was a small attachment with the file name read_this_first.pdf. My stomach twisted. This wasn't from the CEO. I could feel it instantly. There was something cold about it, something rushed or desperate. And now I had two things pushing me in different directions. The CEO telling me a document was coming, and this mystery sender warning me not to trust him at all. I didn't open the attachment. Not yet. I closed the email quickly and sat back, pressing my palms against my forehead. It felt like I had been pulled into the center of something hidden, something I never asked to be part of. And the more I tried to understand it, the more confusing it became. Why was I suddenly important to people inside a massive company? Why were people fighting over whether or not I should be involved? And what exactly was happening inside that company that required secrecy and warnings? I checked my inbox again. Still no message from the CEO. No document from him. Just silence. It made the mysterious email feel even heavier. Part of me wanted to delete it and pretend I never saw it. But another part of me, maybe the same instinct the CEO talked about, knew I couldn't. Not yet. Hours passed, and every minute felt like it stretched longer than the last. I kept getting up, pacing the room, picking up my phone, putting it down again. I couldn't relax. I couldn't distract myself. It felt like something was moving toward me, something unseen but undeniable, and I was just sitting there waiting for it to reach me. As the evening settled in, my phone finally buzzed again. I grabbed it instantly, hoping it was the CEO, but my heart sank when I saw it was another message from the same strange sender. This time, it was even shorter. They're watching. Be careful. My hands went cold. I didn't know who they were. I didn't know who the sender was. But now I knew this wasn't just some random spam message. Someone inside the company was reaching out to me, and they weren't doing it casually. Their words felt urgent, almost like a whisper from someone who didn't have much time. Before I could decide what to do, my laptop pinged. A new email from the official company domain. This one had a subject line. Confidential document. For your eyes only. My heart jumped. This had to be from the CEO. I opened it slowly, holding my breath. The email was short, direct, and formal. It said the attached file contained context I needed to understand before continuing negotiations. The tone was different from his voice on the phone. Colder, more professional, but I knew it was him. Or at least, it came from his side. 2 attachments. One from the CEO's domain. One from the mystery sender. 2 paths. 2 warnings. And no way to know which one was safe. My hands shook as I hovered over the CEO's attachment first. It was labeled Strategic Internal Report.pdf. It sounded legitimate. But the timing, the warnings, the secrecy, everything made me second-guess even the most normal-looking details. I clicked it open anyway. The document wasn't long. Just a few pages. But the first thing I noticed was a sentence highlighted in bold at the top. This information is classified and must not be shared with any unauthorized party. My chest tightened. I kept reading. The report talked about an internal shift, a restructuring, and a project referred to only as Initiative 14. It didn't explain what that meant, but the tone suggested something serious, something that required strict control and absolute trust. There were mentions of a team being replaced silently, of undisclosed roles being monitored, of tensions between certain divisions inside the company. None of it made complete sense, but one thing was clear. The CEO wasn't exaggerating when he said there were 2 versions of the company. and I was being pulled into the one no one talked about. Just as I reached the last page, my phone buzzed again, a third message from the unknown sender. If you opened his file, delete it. You don't know what you're stepping into. I actually felt the air leave my lungs. My pulse sped up as I stared at the message. I didn't delete anything. Instead, I locked my phone and pressed it against my chest, trying to think. Both sides acted like they were protecting me. Both acted like they had the truth. But at least one of them was lying. And I didn't know which one. Suddenly, my doorbell rang. The sound was so sharp and unexpected that I jumped. My breath caught in my throat as I looked toward the door, every nerve in my body tightening. I wasn't expecting anyone. No one knew about the calls. No one knew about the emails. And now, at the exact moment everything felt like it was tipping into danger, someone was standing outside my door. The bell rang again. Short, firm, like someone who had a reason to be there. I stepped slowly toward the door, my heartbeat quick and loud. I didn't open it, not yet. I stood close enough to hear faint movement on the other side. Then a voice came through the door. Soft, controlled, and chillingly calm. I know you received the document. My entire body froze. The voice wasn't the CEO's. It wasn't anyone I recognized. And it wasn't a delivery person or neighbor or friend. It was someone who knew exactly what was happening. Someone who should not have known where I lived. I didn't say a word. I barely breathed. The person outside waited a moment, then spoke again, still calm, still too certain. We need to talk. Before you make a mistake. My fingers curled around the doorknob, not to open it, just to steady myself. The tension inside me felt like it could snap at any moment. I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know which document was the truth. And now someone was at my door, claiming they knew more than both of them. The voice outside added one last sentence. If you open this door, I'll tell you everything. I didn't move. I didn't answer. I just stood there, trapped in the space between fear and curiosity, knowing that whatever I did next would pull me fully into the heart of the conflict. And the truth, whatever it was now inches away. The moment the room fell quiet after her confession, a strange tension filled the air. It wasn't the kind that fades. It lingered, heavy and charged, as if the walls themselves were waiting for what would happen next. She shifted her weight, trying to steady her breathing, but even then something felt off. Almost too off. It took her a second to realize why. Someone else was listening. It began with a soft click from the hallway. Not loud, but unmistakable, the sound of a door that hadn't been fully shut being nudged open. She turned sharply, expecting to see a coworker passing by, or maybe a cleaner coming in early, but the hallway was empty. Quiet. Too quiet. It wasn't the type of silence that brought peace. It was the type that carried secrets. She stepped toward the door slowly, her heartbeat slamming in her chest. She knew only one person had any reason to sneak around at this hour, and just the thought of it tightened her stomach. If he had overheard even a piece of what she said, everything she'd built, every plan, every move, could crumble in seconds. The stakes weren't just higher now, they were dangerous. She moved into the hallway, scanning the dim corridor, but found nothing except the faint echo of footsteps already too far away to catch. And yet, she knew it wasn't her imagination. Someone had been there. Someone who shouldn't have been. By the time she returned to the room, her nerves were set on edge. The air felt different. She noticed her phone screen lighting up on the table with a new message, an unknown number. The preview alone made her freeze. You're running out of time. Stop before it gets worse. There was no name, no context, just a threat, sharp and direct. Whoever sent it knew exactly what was happening, and worst of all, they wanted her to feel the pressure. It was meant to rattle her confidence, to make her second-guess everything. But instead, a slow determination ignited in her chest. If someone was trying this hard to intimidate her, it meant she was getting closer to the truth than she realized. She stared at the message for a moment, her jaw tightening. Then, as she reached for the phone to block the number, a second message came through instantly, as if the sender had been watching her reaction. Don't bother. Blocking me won't save you. Her breath caught. This wasn't random. This wasn't accidental. This person knew her patterns, her moves, her weaknesses. And the only way they could know so much was if they were inside the same world she was navigating. maybe even inside the same building. The realization sent a cold wave down her spine, but at the same time, it sharpened her focus. This wasn't the moment to collapse. This was the moment the real conflict was beginning to surface. She slipped the phone into her pocket, trying to keep her hands from shaking. Her mind raced with every possibility. Who could have overheard her earlier? Who had access to her schedule? Who knew enough to threaten her so directly? She mentally sifted through faces, voices, moments where someone lingered a little too long or asked one question too many. But instead of finding answers, she found something else. A pattern. Someone had been watching her long before today. The realization struck her hard. All those small coincidences she brushed aside, the misplaced files, the subtle shifts in conversations, none of them were accidents. Someone had been pulling strings in the background, waiting for the perfect moment to tighten them around her. And that moment, she knew, had just arrived. She forced herself to breathe steadily as her thoughts rearranged into clarity. If there was a threat inside her circle, then trusting the wrong person could destroy everything. But trusting no one could leave her isolated. She needed to act, but she needed to act smart. And she needed to do it before the mysterious figure behind the messages made their next move. Just as she began forming a plan, her phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't a message. It was a call. Same unknown number. The phone vibrated in her palm like a warning pulse. She didn't answer. After a long, tense ring, it stopped. For a moment, she let herself believe it was over. But the relief lasted only seconds before a voicemail notification popped up. Her chest tightened as she pressed play. A distorted voice filled the room, low and whisper rough, as if filtered through static. You're looking in the wrong direction. The danger isn't behind you. It's beside you. The message ended abruptly, leaving the room in a dead, echoing silence. Her pulse thudded in her ears. The danger is beside you. She replayed the words over and over, each time feeling the meaning shift, sharpen, and cut deeper. This wasn't just a threat. It was a clue, a warning, a challenge, and it changed everything. For the first time, she realized the real enemy wasn't the person she had been confronting this entire time. The real threat was someone she had trusted, someone she never once suspected. Someone who had been quietly orchestrating the chaos while pretending to stand on her side. A sudden chill washed over her as the truth settled in her bones. The story she thought she understood was only the surface. Underneath it, a deeper conflict was waiting to explode. And now, with the stakes higher than ever, she had no choice but to push forward, even if it meant stepping directly into danger. The twist wasn't just surprising. It was personal. It was only the beginning. She stood there for a long moment, staring at her phone as if it were something alive, something watching her just as closely as the person behind those messages. The words kept replaying in her mind. The danger isn't behind you. It's beside you. She tried to shake it off, but the meaning clung to her like cold air. Someone she trusted had been playing both sides. Someone she allowed into her circle without question. And now she had no choice but to confront the truth head-on. She walked down the hallway, her steps steady but her pulse racing. The office felt different tonight, almost unreal. The lights hummed softly, the air conditioner clicked in the background, and every shadow along the walls seemed sharper than before. When she pushed open the door to the main workspace, she found him exactly where she expected, leaning over his desk, pretending to work, pretending everything was still normal. He looked up with a casual smile. Too casual. You're still here? Thought you left. She watched his face closely. He looked calm, comfortable, almost relieved to see her. And that alone was her confirmation. He wasn't surprised she showed up. He was waiting. I got a strange message, she said quietly, keeping her voice steady. Someone warned me about danger. He tilted his head, pretending concern. What kind of danger? The kind that stands right beside you, she said. For the first time, something shifted in his eyes. Not guilt, fear. Just a flicker, quick but clear. And in that instant, everything clicked into place. You knew, she whispered. You knew everything that was happening. You were there when the files went missing. You were there when the messages started. You even showed up every time I questioned someone. I didn't see it before, but now I do. He stood slowly, no longer pretending. You were getting too close, he said softly. You were going to ruin everything. Her hands tensed at her sides. All I did was trust you. That was the point, he said, almost gently. Trust makes people blind. For a moment, neither of them moved. The tension felt like it could crack the room in half. She knew she needed to end this, right here, right now, before things spiraled any further. The truth was already out. The lies had run their course, and she wasn't going to let him control the ending. I'm done being blind, she said. He took a step forward, but she didn't retreat. She held her ground, meeting him eye to eye. She could see the plan unfolding in his expression, the calculation, the regret, even the panic that he tried to mask. But before he could say another word, the door behind them swung open. Her friend, the one who had helped her piece together clues earlier, walked in holding her phone. I traced the messages, she said quickly. They didn't come from outside. They came from inside the building. And guess what? Every signal led right back to him. His face drained of color. You shouldn't have done that, he muttered. It's over, her friend said, stepping forward. We know everything now. But just when it seemed like the conflict had reached its breaking point, something unexpected happened. He didn't run. He didn't deny it. Instead, he let out a slow breath, almost like he had been holding it in for hours. You think I did this alone, he said. The words hit her like a shockwave. What do you mean? He reached into his pocket and tossed a small device onto the table. A tracking chip, one she had never seen before, one that didn't belong to him. This wasn't my plan, he admitted quietly. I played a part, but I wasn't the one pulling the strings. I was following instructions. The real person behind all this, there's someone you never suspected. Someone who's been watching both of us. A chill rolled down her spine. Who? He hesitated, then gave a name she never imagined. Someone she trusted even more than him. Someone she thought was helping her from the very beginning. The twist hit harder than any threat, any clue, any message she'd received. Because now the truth wasn't just painful, it was dangerous in a completely new way. Her friend looked at her, eyes wide. We have to go. Now. But before they could move, her phone buzzed again. A new message. No unknown number this time. No distorted voice. Just a single line from that familiar name. You're too late. Her breath caught as everything closed in around her. The danger, the betrayal, the realization that the real mastermind had been 2 steps ahead all along. The main conflict was resolved, but the final twist made one thing painfully clear. The story wasn't ending here. It was only shifting into its most dangerous chapter yet. For a moment, everything felt strangely silent, even though her phone was still glowing in her hand. That message, short, sharp, and final, echoed inside her mind. You're too late. It was the kind of line meant to knock the ground out from under her, to make her feel powerless. But instead, something in her shifted. It wasn't fear anymore. It was clarity. All the running, the guessing, the worrying, the tracking, it suddenly pointed in one direction. And she finally understood exactly what she needed to do. Her friend stepped closer, watching her carefully. What does it mean? Too late for what? She took a slow breath. It means they think they've already won. Do you? Her friend asked quietly. No, she said. Not even close. Instead of backing down, she finally walked toward the truth she had been avoiding. The mastermind wasn't a stranger. It wasn't someone hiding in the shadows. It was someone she had admired at the company, someone who had offered guidance and advice, someone who always seemed to know just a little too much about her progress. Someone who had reached out to her the moment the CEO showed interest. When she thought about it, the puzzle pieces suddenly fit with painful accuracy. She grabbed her bag and headed toward the elevator. We're going upstairs, she said. Her friend frowned. To their office? Exactly. The ride up felt like the longest moment of her life. Each floor passing by made her mind replay every interaction she'd had with the person she now believed was behind the entire setup. Every compliment that felt too perfect. Every helpful suggestion that nudged her in the wrong direction without her noticing. Every time they somehow knew about her struggles before she even mentioned them. She realized now that it had all been a quiet manipulation dressed as support. When the doors opened, the hallway was empty, but a soft light glowed from inside the office at the end. She pushed the door open, and there they were, sitting calmly, as if waiting for her. "I knew you'd come," they said, smiling gently. Not guilty, not nervous, just calm. She stepped inside, her friend close behind. "You sent the message." "Yes." "You orchestrated everything." "Most of it." "Why?" she asked, her voice shaky but steady enough. There was a pause, then a sigh. "Because you were about to take an offer you weren't ready for. You were about to walk into a world that would devour you. You think the CEO wanted you because you're talented, and you are, but they also wanted someone easy to shape, someone hungry enough to overlook the things they didn't want seen. I stopped you from taking that path." Her brows furrowed. "By scaring me? By leaking files? By turning people against me?" "I didn't leak anything," they said, shaking their head. "I created noise, distraction, enough chaos to make the CEO reveal what they were really after. And they did, didn't they? They called you personally. They told you to name your price. Doesn't that sound a little too good to be true?" Her breath caught because she had wondered the same thing deep down. It wasn't normal for someone at the top to pursue a candidate that aggressively. It wasn't normal for them to call her, convince her, insist on her. It was flattering, but it also felt strange. And she had ignored that feeling. Her friend stepped forward. "So you manipulated her for her own good? That's not protection. That's control." They nodded slightly. "Maybe I went too far. Maybe I believed the only way to help you was to break the illusion first. But look at you, stronger, sharper, more aware. You're not the same person who walked into this company. You're seeing people clearly now, including me." There was a long silence. She didn't feel anger anymore. She didn't feel fear. All she felt was exhaustion and a sense of completion. The mystery that hung over her like a cloud had finally taken shape. And even though the truth was complicated, it gave her something she didn't expect: closure. "What now?" she asked softly. They leaned back, their tone steady. "Now you decide what path you want without anyone pushing you. Not the CEO, not your coworkers, not me. You. That's all I ever wanted." For the first time in days, she felt a strange sense of calm settling over her. Not happiness, not relief, just understanding. Everything had spiraled, but now it felt like the story had finally reached its last page. She turned to her friend, then back to them. "I'm leaving the company," she said. Both of them looked surprised. "I need space. I need to choose what I want without anyone else's agenda. Whether the CEO had good intentions or not, whether you were trying to help or not, I need to breathe." Her friend nodded proudly. "You deserve that." Even the mastermind nodded, accepting her decision without protest. "Then this was worth it," they said quietly. She walked out of the office, feeling lighter than she had in a long time. The hallway no longer felt threatening. The elevator ding no longer sent a chill down her spine. When she stepped out into the cool night air, the sky looked clearer, as if the storm had finally passed. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a threat. It was the CEO. She stared at the screen for a moment before silencing the call. She didn't need to answer. Not yet. Maybe not ever. For once, her future wasn't in someone else's hands. It was entirely in her own. As she walked toward her car, her friend beside her, she realized something important, something she wished she had learned earlier but was grateful to understand now. Not every offer is a blessing. Not every warning is a threat. And not every person who seems helpful is truly on your side. But the strength she found in uncovering the truth, the growth she experienced through conflict, and the clarity she gained in choosing her own path, those were things no job title, no CEO, no scheme could ever take from her. She leaned against the car door, taking a slow breath. "I didn't expect any of this," she said. Her friend smiled. "But you handled it." "I did," she whispered. "And maybe that's the real story. In the end, she didn't choose power or approval or reward. She chose herself, and that was the most satisfying resolution she could have ever written for her life." With the night settling gently around her and her phone finally silent, she opened the car door, ready for whatever came next, this time on her own terms. And the story ended not with fear, not with chaos, but with a quiet, steady confidence that she had earned every step of the way.